Welcome, everybody. Glad you all made it. My name is Alex Sanchez, and we at Underground Ministries are excited for our first ever live Zoom event. Me, I'm a little nervous, so I prepared some notes that I can look off of. I've spent 10 years of my life in prison, much of it in solitary confinement. So I'm still getting used to this public speaking and Zoom thing, but I'm learning a lot of new things since I got out. How to be sober, how to deal with my emotions, how to trust people, including myself, how to apply for a job, how to work manufacturing and lead a crew of other guys, how to be a community college student and turn in papers on time. I just got married this summer and I'm learning how to be a husband, how to be a father in a blended family. Breaking the prison loop for me has been all about learning new things, getting out of my comfort zone and building new relationships like with you all. So check this out. We only have an hour together this evening and we want to honor your time. So here's how it would all go. We want to take you on a journey with us. This is not a full analysis of all the causes of the prison system. That wouldn't fit in our time together. And there's lots of great documentaries out there. Tonight, we want to share some firsthand stories about how normal folks like you can directly interrupt this prison cycle with a simple ingredient: new relationships. Hopefully you'll feel encouraged and inspired. And we're going to give you 2 ways you can plug in: participate and partner with us. All right, hand it over to Derek now.
Derek, you're on mute.
Terribly sorry about that. So as I was saying, for decades now, the U.S. has been incarcerating more of its own citizens per capita than any other nation in the world. And while the U.S. accounts for less than 5% of the world's population, it holds over 20% of the world's known incarcerated population. Can you see the graphic on the screen? Alvin, do you have that graphic up? No? Well, there we are. We had a different graphic, but it would illustrate that there's a ramp up in mass incarceration. There was the war on drugs, the legislative acts that were shown to have a vastly disproportionate impact on people of color, and also the Violent Crime Control Act that stripped incarcerated students of the Pell Grant, essentially eliminating college education programs. And then there's further shifts from this restorative justice towards punitive justice. And while that trend is now beginning to reverse, U.S. incarceration rates still remain the highest in the world by far, as you can see by the graphic on the screen now. The United States also has some of the highest recidivism rates in the world by far. According to the National Institute of Justice, about 68% are rearrested for a new crime within 3 years and 77% within 5 years. Keeping that in mind, consider that every year, roughly 700,000 people are released from prison in the United States every year. So clearly we have a problem. Tara Liebert, the co-founder and executive director of Free Minds, says that, and quote, "The prison system is designed to break ties to separate the person who's incarcerated from their community." And now, while this is a penological objective intended to interrupt criminality and protect the community from further harm, that resultant 77% recidivism rate certainly indicates that this alone is not sustainable. Without strong pathways that foster pro-social identity and meaningful community, releasing men and women are at a monumental disadvantage, hands down. Peer support programs provide that sustainable solution. And also, according to Tara Liebert, they repair, they restore, and create new community connections, which are essential for successful reentry. So we have a problem as society, not just the crime and the sickness of individuals who ultimately need healing, but we as a culture that's become accustomed to throwing people away. We bury our problems and we bury our people with them. It takes communities, faith communities, to choose to help roll away that stone and embrace men and women out of that prison cycle. I myself was incarcerated. I returned in 2018 after serving 7 years. And in June this year, I graduated from the Michael G. Foster School of Business at the University of Washington, Seattle, and became a board member with the Underground Ministries. I was excited, so excited to join this organization because I've never seen anything like this in all my experience around reentry efforts. By connecting the people, not the labels, not the numbers, but the incarcerated people and the people in their communities. Underground Ministries addresses mass incarceration at both ends, fostering an unprecedented pathway, in my opinion, to successful reentry, mutual healing, and social transformation.
Derek, we are thrilled to have you on board as a board member. Friends, Derek just laid out pretty succinctly the problem, that this is a society that represses and throws people away at that rate. It's not just an illness of folks that are committing crimes, but this is something that we need as well. And so if we have mass incarceration, I've kind of boiled it down to is mass disconnection. And so what we need when people leave the Department of Corrections is a department of connections. What we like to tell some of our one parish, one prisoner churches, we're gonna talk about that in a sec, is we're not here to correct people, but we're here to connect people. And so that's what we want to do. I worked as a chaplain in a jail for years, and I just fell in love with so many guys as friends that I wanted them to come out. But I realized when they got out of prison, the release date, they're not yet out. They would get out, but without a good housing, without a good job, the number one, without their license. And I thought, hey, I can help people study to get their license, but they can't. There's a hold on their license. And the hold is from legal debts that are the courts put on there. They have debt they didn't know. So while they're in prison for 5 years, that debt is compounding at 12% annually. And so there are all these barriers to folks coming out. So even though they're out of the prison walls, they're still in kind of underground. And that's why we call our organization Underground Ministries, is we want to help unbury people from the civic netherworld so that reentry is really about practicing resurrection. I was trying to do this for years, and several of us at Underground Ministries were. And then someone told us this: in Washington State, there's roughly the same amount of incarcerated people as there are churches. And I'll be honest, I'd kind of given up on churches other than speaking in them every once in a while and seeking donations or a few volunteers. They're like, wait a minute, we've got churches all over the state. And we've got people in state prisons releasing all over the state. What if every single person in prison had a faith community locally who is ready to walk with them and love them and do what we do, that's relationally intensive, to roll away the stones of all these reentry barriers and the appointments and getting a used car and have someone watch kids. And there's so much love and life experience in churches. They just don't have access. And so this excited us, thinking about, we'd been learning from Michelle Alexander, author of The New Jim Crow, talking about we need a new underground railroad today. I thought, what if that's what we're building? What if we're building a new underground railroad? Brian Stevenson, author of maybe some of you guys have read Just Mercy. He talks about, hey, before we get involved in legislative action, we need to get closer. What transformed his life? He talks about the power of proximity. And so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to harness that power of getting people a little bit closer and then watch the magic happen of when relationships begin through prison letters and through learning about reentry together. Mutuality is for us. Not only can that welcome people home from prison and develop connections, but I think that might change every church, which is really just community members, and that we can have kind of a mutual both sides transformation. That's our goal. And so you're going to hear stories right now that are following our blueprint. Whether you are a believer in the Christian tradition or not, I like stories. And so stories give me like visual maps. And so we have been using the story of the raising of Lazarus as our blueprint. And that's going to be our framework tonight. That Jesus, he weeps. And there's a story when he raises Lazarus from the dead, even before Jesus' own resurrection. He weeps because his friend, and there's the F word right there at the beginning of resurrection. The F word is friend. It's his friend. It wasn't a program. It's his friend. And he calls the community together, not only to call Lazarus out of the grave and brings life to him, but he calls the community to roll away the stone. So those are our first two steps right there. Here's our blueprint. Here's our how-to for how you can interrupt mass incarceration. One, have a relationship with someone still in the tombs of the prison system. And we do that through letters And then that leads to being on their visit list and doing a visit and phone calls. So 1, relationship with someone in the tombs, it's a friendship. 2, rolling away the stones, actual heavy barriers like driver's licenses and debt and housing and access to jobs and child support payments. So rolling away the stone. But then 3, once Lazarus comes out, Jesus tells not Lazarus, but the community, unbind him. So if the stone, rolling away the stones are all these systemic barriers that folks need a lot of accompaniment to roll away, these heavy barriers, the rolling away, the removing the layers, the protective layers, the death clothes is what we use as a metaphor for all the protective layers of maybe labels, false identities, felon, criminal, gangbanger, addict, all the ways that we protect ourselves, numb ourselves. And we found that as people get close and touch and become in proximate relationship with folks home from prison, they start to reveal that folks in churches, we've got our layers too. We've got our fake smiles, we've got our BS, and we have our own wounds and our old stories as well. And so these are the stories we want to begin with. So tonight's beginning, relationship in the tombs. The first step, we're going to hear from Monica and Riley.
Hey, everybody. I'm Monica. I'm with the Faith Community St. Cecilia Parish on Bainbridge Island. And my friend in the one parish, one prisoner family, her name is Lily. And I met her in August. Well, I should say all I had was her name and a blurry picture. And I was going to write my first letter to her. And I thought, I'm a visual person. I'm used to reading people's body language, hearing the tone of their voice, being able to figure out what we can talk about, what we can connect about. So writing that first letter was a little like, it was like being blind. And I realized I felt vulnerable because I didn't have anything to go off on. But the cool thing is, as we've been writing back and forth, it's really very, very mutual. There's a mutual trusting each other, mutual opening up, a mutual sharing. One of my last letters, I'd had a really bad week at work. And so I shared some of that with her. And I was so touched this week in my letter. Not only did she write back, but she also included all of these things to cheer me up. And on the back, she'd written something personal for each one of those. She was lifting me up. I was the one being helped. I can't tell you how gratifying that is. And it occurred to me that God is using her. You know, even though she's in the tombs, he's using her to bring the light out to the rest of us. Our team at St. Cecilia, we don't know each other that well. God is using her to bring all of us together and to get to know her. And it's an incredible thing. I am so grateful for it.
Thank you so much for sharing, Monica. I am the pastor to Lily. My name is Reverend Riley Pickett, and I am the pastor of Hagar's Community Church on the inside of Washington Correction Center for Women. We are a prison located in Gig Harbor, Washington, which is right across the bridge from Tacoma. And I didn't know, I was so delighted to see those cards that she sent you. I mean, first and foremost, I'm just so happy that the people on these teams are getting to know my congregants like I get to know them. That in and of itself is an amazing thing because they're wonderful people. And I feel privileged to have access to them, especially during COVID when there's no volunteers in the prison. For me to be able to get to go in there every week and build relationships with them is really special. And 18 of my congregants have applied and been accepted to One Parish, One Prisoner, and 4 of them have already been paired with a team of people at a church. And so, yeah, I just want to speak really briefly just how I see this impacting the people in my congregation. And I know it's impacting them from what they tell me. And it isn't always easy opening themselves up to being known and potentially rejected. A lot of my congregants hold a lot of shame that has been put on them and shame that they hold and within their own selves. And when that shame is met with empathy and when that shame is spoken out loud, it cannot survive. And that is a healing thing, to let themselves be known and to face that fear of being known. has been really scary, but at the same time is healing. But also these relationships are giving hope, and hope makes people lighter. And I've seen just like the excitement, especially in Lily. She seems for the first time a little more excited about getting out because, of course, she's really stressed out about all the things she's going to have to do when she gets out, and not having family in the States. She doesn't have family here. So to be able to have relationships before she even gets out in her community just gives a sense of like excitement and confidence that this is going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And yeah, that's all I've got.
Thanks, Riley and Monica. So that's just a taste of writing letters and what just letters can do. And we're with an age of texting and email. A lot of us have forgotten the lost art of letter writing. And it's with our friends in the tombs that there's a depth of communion that can happen in letters. And a lot of the New Testament is letters anyway. So we're kind of reclaiming the epistolary tradition. So that's relationship with those friendships who are still in the tombs. But secondly, when Jesus calls a community, he doesn't say, hey, Lazarus, if you're really alive, show me how strong you are and roll that stone away. That's a lot of the expectations we put on people coming home from prison. But Jesus calls the community to move and undo these heavy structures that we've put there. These aren't accidental policies. These are real barriers to keep people in the underground, because we don't want people we've stuffed in the tombs to come back. But we believe in a God who does. And so what if Lazarus came alive, but the stone was not rolled away? That's a question we ask teams a lot. How would that feel? Folks oftentimes say words like trapped, scared, claustrophobic, rather go back to being dead. So those emotions describe a lot of folks that they get out of prison, but they're still behind these barriers. All that hope, that coming alive in the tombs, coming alive, having faith and hope in prison, that they get out and face these barriers and forget this, I'll just go back. So Philip, tell us what it was like when you started writing people you didn't know, and what kind of barriers you all came up against together.
Hello. Yeah, when you talk about structures and the power of letters, it brings to mind for me the situation that I encountered. I was eligible for a program that the Department of Corrections now offers called Graduated Reentry. After applying for it, I was accepted, but then through the bureaucratic mechanism that the Department of Corrections is, I was told that I would not be able to participate in the program due to lack of space. So through the relationship that was cultivated with my team at Bellingham Presbyterian Church, we were able to brainstorm and mobilize to write letters to state legislators, people within the Department of Corrections. And those letters, Representative Tara Simmons actually was contacted by myself and members of my team, and she made a personal phone call to the Secretary of the Department of Corrections and explained the situation. And having the entire community and my one prisoner, one parish team behind me was able to, in the stroke of a pen, get me home with my family. And so I was able to come home, a year before I expected to come home. So, I can't overemphasize the power that just having people in the community, the constituents of the individuals who these representatives and these bureaucracies listen to, reach out and say, hey, we vouch for this person, we support this person. It really removed a heavy structural bureaucratic barrier that was in front of me.
Yeah, Bill Palmer, I'm in the Bellingham Church, is partnering up with Philip. My initial experience with Philip, I was frankly scared. 7-year-old white guy, what am I going to have to do to connect with a guy coming out of prison with all the images I have? Quickly turned out in the letters, and then especially once he was out, that immediately we ended up talking about his issues with dad and what that produced, my issues with my dad, what it produced. Turns out that rather than the image I had, here comes a guy that's probably got a better vocabulary than me, way smarter and more articulate, taken every class that they have for him to take in the prison system, that all my images of who is this guy, all my preconceived notions just got blown to pieces. So the fear that I started with went away and replaced by just the pleasure of a mutual friend, not a dependent guy on me, but a real friend. And then secondly, the emotion turned into anger, because when I looked at what he had to go through to get back into life with his family, starting with the fact that they told him after saying he had 9 months to get out, they said, now we changed our mind, we're busy with COVID, for us to be able to get in and help him get out. But then we had all sorts of other issues in terms of, like Chris said, licensing and all that, that we were able to support and help him to do. Even to the extent of my granddaughter, who's a potter, is on the team and got so caught up in Philip's story and what was going on, she started producing pottery with candles in them that we sold in the church to raise money to help Philip with car and insurance and driver's license and all that. So it is just really cool for all ages, 70-year-old grandpa down to a 16-year-old high school junior, able to connect in a new way, create a new image of who we're dealing with here, and then find a way to contribute to making that better.
Awesome. Philip, you had told me that once you were home, while you were skeptical of the kind of religious nature of the program, just share a little bit more about those kind of preconditions or preconceptions we have of each other and how that might have changed.
Yeah, initially with my connection with you and other programs and other endeavors that we tackled while I was still incarcerated, One Prisoner, One Parish was mentioned to me in the program, and I knew some of the other participants that had got out, and some had, that I had reconnected with. And I was skeptical just because a lot of times whenever you're talking about reentry programs, specifically church programs, there's somewhat of a cookie cutter outlook that you would have, that how they're all kind of similar in the sense of, hey, if you don't drink the Kool-Aid, the resources are going to dry up, the relationships are going to go stale. But I was immediately struck from the first letter with some of the people on my team, just how much of a lack of that there was, just how much of just genuine people with genuine problems. And even though they had not been incarcerated themselves or encountered some of the things that I've encountered in my life, the way that we were able to connect and the way that we were able to see our similarities and just how alike we were, whether it be family issues or issues of confidence or professional interests, we were able to connect and just build genuine, real relationships that in and of themselves didn't even have to do with what one would immediately associate with a church program. So One Prisoner, One Parish for me has just, it hasn't been so much of a church experience as it's been a human experience, as it's been an experience of truly finding my identity and finding a community that supports that identity in my reentry process and in my walk as a husband and a father.
Awesome. Thank you, Philip. This is new for us to we're telling some of our friends who are willing to share some stories tonight that this is more like a mosaic, just taking off a tiny little piece of a story and fitting them all together. A lot of these stories could definitely take up an entire hour with the complexity and the narrative arc that a lot of them have. But right now, I want to see if our friend Wally is here. Wally, are you here? If you are, unmute yourself and yell at us. I don't know if I see you.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
There you are, Wally. I hear you.
Yeah, can you guys see me?
Yeah, I can see you, Wally.
Yeah, I'm
Alvin, if you could put him up on the spotlight.
Wally, keep talking. I can't find you.
Look
Yeah.
for Rose.
Oh, there he is.
Rosemary Grouse.
There's our
yeah, I'm under Rosemary. I'm using that.
There you are,
Nice to meet
handsome.
Wally.
Wally, tell us a little bit about your experience and especially with the medical processes that can get intimidating.
Well, my name is Wally I'm Guadalupe Wally Cienfuegos. I go by Wally. When I was in there, I got to know my OPOP team for like about a year before I got out. I've been out for like about a year and a half already. I known them with letters, calls, and got to get their trust, and they got to get my trust, and because it's hard to ask for help, especially when you're in the addiction, and then for me, especially personally, because when I'm in addiction, and then when I'm clean and sober, it's hard to take advantage of people, how I tried and used to when I was addicted. But there's an OPOP lady, Shirley, one of my team members, she helped me when my hand was broken. It's been broken from an old crime and stuff like that. And but it's been already surgery. She helped me with my insurance, my surgery, to get it in process, and she's been going with me and filling out paperwork, and they have helped me through through all that process. Even when I didn't have income, they've been through there helping me, and then I got a job I love, and I got good friends today, and I'm proud of of my OPOP team and what they have done with me, since I've been out. It's awesome. And, I wouldn't imagine without them, because every time I've been in 3 times already, this was my longest stretch. I've been for, 7 years in there, and the other one's been like 24 months, a year and a half. And, but this time it's, I really wanted to, change my life and, live a productive lifestyle. And through them and with them, I've been, doing that. Today I'm, happy with myself, and, I go and visit them, and, and eat dinners with them, and, and meet their families and their kids and stuff like that. I never had this before in my life, but yeah, that's what's awesome about the OPOP team.
Amen.
I don't know how many people here tonight have had troubles navigating the medical system in America. Raise your hand if you've had trouble calling insurance companies and figuring out billing and how you can get what kind of condition or surgery. I mean, it's difficult. And so imagine if you'd never navigated these kinds of 800 numbers or offices or forms or had insurance, how many people have medical problems that those normal stones, not even normal reentry stones, just normal systems that are in the way, those are hard. And so that Shirley, who used to work in the medical field for years, we have so many skills in these congregations. She said, oh, I can deal with that. And she just went after them with a fury, with Social Security and medical offices, and be like, what, like, talk about grandma energy. There are so many beautiful souls in the later seasons of life in churches, and there's this fierce grandma and grandpa energy that I've just seen harness. Like, whoa, they're more passionate about some of these stones to roll away than I am. And so the way that Shirley went after the medical system and got Wally plugged in and got through a surgery, and the team could help him heal, was incredible. Not only that, Wally, you could work at your job in manufacturing and in testing, but check this guy out right here. That is a 5-weight fly rod in my man's hand. And Wally went fly fishing with one of our friends, Dan Stoner, who might be here tonight, who takes some teams of guys who are home fly fishing. And Wally pulled in, like, was it 10 or 12, like massive trout out of a reservoir in Utah?
10. It was 10.
So that, for me, that's why we get people out of prison, so that we can fish together. That's why we call annoying insurance companies and get surgeries, so that hand can work to love, to play, to catch trout. And I'm really glad you're with us, Wally. And I'm really glad we've got teams to help with that. Well, so those are the stones to roll away. But now we want to talk a little bit more about the layers. So remember, Jesus tells the community, unbind him. And so how do we get to know one another beneath the kind of the labels that even Bill, it referred to a little bit, like, oh, someone's in a gang. Is that scary? How are we going to relate? And I wonder if when Lazarus came out, he probably looked scary, like a mummy or something out of a nightmare. But then Jesus invites them to get closer to the figure of their fears and touch. And as I'm sure as they revealed the true self, Thomas Merton and other contemplatives talk about it, this is a spiritual act. So we've all got these false selves, and to remove them, and the real Lazarus probably became more clear, a really lovable, wounded, cool, unique guy, whoever Lazarus was. And so Sarah had an experience. Sarah was on one of our very first One Parish, One Prisoner teams. Sarah, what was your experience getting to know a local Lazarus, and how that changed your eyes and kind of sight?
Well, I'm Sarah Catton from Mount Vernon Presbyterian Church. And certainly it's been an experience like nothing I've ever had before. I first connected with Leroy 4 years ago through letters that I sent to him in prison. The first letter that he sent back to me really moved me to tears. He was so open in the way that he told me his life story. I didn't expect that. We wrote to each other a few more times when then, almost without warning, he was out on work release. Our team was new and we felt like we didn't yet know what we were doing, but we started going up there to Bellingham to meet him, to bring him to church, to bring him to our homes for a meal, took him to get his driving test and his first driver's license. Even took him to meet his first grandchild. Everything was going real well, and we were growing in friendship. After about 6 months, Leroy was out of work release. We helped him then with a place to live, a bank account, a job, and even a car. Things seemed real good at first, but then Leroy soon began to struggle. After a short time, he essentially disappeared. We should have seen it coming, but we were new to this still, and we didn't see it coming. Our hearts really were broken. It didn't matter that we'd been warned from the very beginning, from the very first meeting, that this sort of thing could happen. We felt that we'd failed him and that we must have done everything wrong. In addition to the hurt that I personally felt, I also believed that I'd been foolishly naive in trusting him so much. I was very angry with Leroy and also with myself. Despite that, I worried about him constantly. For a whole summer, every time I was driving around or anything out in town, I was looking for Leroy. I didn't know what I would do if I saw him, but I sure wanted to find him. Whenever I would see, groups of tattooed guys hanging around, I looked for Leroy, wondering, is one of those fellows, is my friend there? And can I see him? Can I talk to him? Can I find out if he's okay? When I finally learned that Leroy was back in the county jail, my first feeling was one of relief. He was off the streets, and hopefully he was safe. Our journey with Leroy wasn't finished.
Leroy is now on Zoom and is able to join us, and that story does continue. You can grab the mic, Leroy. What you want to do is unmute first. I don't know if it's like on your phone or laptop. There we go.
Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Pick up where Sarah left off. What happened next, Leroy?
So everything that Sarah said is true. I was too focused on the beginning. I was too focused telling myself, I got this. And in reality, I was also focused on change, and I didn't realize it was going to be hard. I stopped focusing on myself, and in reality, I needed to focus on healing. I needed to heal myself, and I didn't realize it was so quick to go back to what I knew, and I crashed hard. I had a lot of obstacles. I felt like I had a backpack full of rocks that I had to carry. And it got heavy. And I remember, when I went in, I sobered up and I started dealing with a lot of guilt. I felt very resentful of failing on myself, but I also kept telling me maybe I needed to go back and focus and start all over again on healing. And, it worked. I made some phone calls. I ended up calling before she was my wife, Annie, and we cried on the phone, and I said how much sorry I was, and I wanted to write to Sarah, but she's the first one that wrote me back, and it made me really think like, man, she's for real. She's really for real. She's an amazing person, and she's never stopped believing in me. She's never stopped writing me, and at first I was hesitant to write back because I was embarrassed, but I let go of pride, let it go of everything, and really just tell myself, you know what? She's a person just like me. She loves me. She really cares about me. She's a loyal, true friend. And I wrote back, and here we are. The story continues.
This is one of when we talk about removing the layers, shame, fear, and we've seen in more and more teams that we work with that people in churches might come to a meeting with putting their best face forward, as people in churches are trained and rewarded to do, right? We put our best face forward. But one of our very first teams, someone said, oh yeah, we want to work on this. And then when they Googled their person and their name, they saw, oh, this person has some domestic violence charges. I might not be right for this. And I went out with one of these first teams, and this woman started to share. I said, tell me more about your experience with that. And this person started to open up and talk about that she had experience with domestic violence. And then it turned out that it wasn't just in her home, but that she was raised in the church, and that her father, who committed domestic violence in their home for years, was very involved in their denomination and in their church. And after about half an hour of her telling these stories, we realized, she said, I haven't talked about this with anyone. I've never told anyone in the church about this. And we kind of laughed awkwardly about, isn't it interesting that you're finally opening up and telling these stories, because we are in relationship now with someone coming home from prison with domestic violence charges that he cannot hide. And so this is maybe unlocking some of the wounds that are just under the surface here within the church. And so within weeks, that church was now kind of having better conversations and hosting a group coming in, talking about violence within the church and creating safer places and identifying signs and helping families heal and coming out of the shadows. And so this is the kind of mutual healing of taking off the layers of good church person, scary person in prison, and that we're both have really similar wounds, and we might need each other for our mutual healing. And so Sarah telling the story as well of driving around Mount Vernon and looking for Leroy, and now all of a sudden young Mexican-American men that might have been invisible to her or kind of scary before, now all of them could be the beloved. And even before Leroy came home, that was one of the greatest stories of hope that we had, is even if every person doing One Parish One Prisoner relapsed or went back to prison, what if every church started driving around their towns differently, saying, is that my friend? Is that my friend down that street? Is that my friend? That would be a net good. And then all the more good surprise that when we stay in touch, so a lot of churches have said, well, that person, they're either doing well or they're not doing well. Give us another person. And we've said, no, it's one parish, one prisoner. If you want more people to be helped, knock on the church next door and tell them to get involved. And you who are watching tonight, that's part of what we're doing. We want you all to get involved so that these communities can stay in one relationship, that it's not just on to the next, but that Sarah has time to be an ongoing relationship with Leroy. And Leroy is home just a few blocks from here right now. And so we want to bring in just a couple more voices. Pastor Doug Bunnell, when we're looking at long-term change, so the relationship with those who are in the tombs, rolling away the stones, removing the layers that we're all hiding behind, but then so that we can do life together, what is a longer term change that you saw as you're looking at the next generation in your faith community?
Chris, if I can just say amen. You're preaching great stuff. Thank you. Doug Bunnell, I'm at First Presbyterian Church of Bellingham. We are the church that is privileged, and I mean that, privileged to walk with Philip. It has been incredible to get to know him, and it's changed who we are as a community. But I want to talk about just one small thing. Early on, we had a request from a youth. Bill was talking a little bit about this, but a 16-year-old who wanted to join our team. And so we called Chris, and he said, we've never done that before, but you guys give it a shot. Let's try it. We're a church that believes in intergenerational. And we thought, can we do this intergenerationally? And there were some concerns, and we talked with families and we talked it all over, but it has changed who we are as a church. Imagine youth who do not think very highly of the church. Most of them hear stuff about the church and they think that the church is a bunch of racists and a bunch of people that are judgmental. And to get a youth involved in what we're doing, and that youth has changed who we are as we do this. We now will no longer have a committee without a youth on it. We're changing the way we do things just from doing this. And imagine a youth getting involved in doing actual work, not just going to youth group meeting, but doing something that changes the world. We found out that that's what the youth want to do. So we are excited about that change. And that's just one small change that we've seen.
Thanks, Doug. Pastor Liz.
Hi, folks. My name is Reverend Liz Carney. I'm a pastor down here on occupied Cowlitz tribal lands in Longview, and I'm also the moderator of the guide team for Hagar's Community Church. I recently preached a sermon about how many beloveds we sacrifice to this system of mass incarceration, which really is a way of outsourcing the work of being community to prisons, to the police, rather than us as the community of faith tending to the root causes of harm together alongside our neighbors. And I'm a person who loves the season of Advent in the church calendar, and it's coming upon us if you are a Christian. And it always strikes me that this time of year, we are preaching these texts from prophets like Isaiah, who gives us this vision from God of turning swords into plowshares and spears into pruning hooks, which is really just a fancy way of saying that God's greatest hope for the world is that we would divest ourselves from weapons and systems of violence like prisons and policing, and instead invest ourselves in gardening tools, new ways of being that cultivate new life together. And a program like One Parish, One Prisoner at its best is shrinking the footprint of the violence of the prison industrial complex, because we are so busy being invested in one another in mutually supportive communities that we all have what we need to be truly safe. Because our communities, our churches can do what cages could never do. One Parish, One Prisoner is building a community fabric that is ensuring that every member of our community gets what they need to thrive, whether it's the help with insurance, whether it's help getting a car or a job, whether it's help unlocking our secrets of shame that we hold in our churches for decades and decades. It's a way that we can together get to the root causes of harm. And this is who the church is called to be. We're called to be repairers of the breach. That's again, Isaiah, his words. Those who make prisons and policing obsolete because we are just so darn busy bringing heaven to earth. So that is my vision for who we can be as the church in the coming days. And keep that in mind as we enter this Advent season, if you are a Christian, and that's a season of year that you observe. And so One Parish, One Prisoner is one way we embody that together. So excited to be here with all of you tonight.
Yeah, Pastor Liz.
Oh,
Take it away, Alvin. How do we do this?
if we want to do something about this in prayerful action together as a church, there's two steps that we humbly suggest. One is become a One Parish, One Prisoner church. We've heard from a few churches scattered across our state so far. There's 25 of them that are in active relationships of embrace and trust with an incarcerated brother or sister. On my whiteboard here at the office, there's more than 30 green Post-it notes, more than 30 incarcerated brothers and sisters that are still waiting to be paired with the Jesus-loving, Jesus-following church to go through all the murkiness of their own inability to reach out and be vulnerable and to hold hands and say, we can call DOC or the health system or whatever it is, we can go down to the municipal office together and find all these details. Do that with your church, please. Get on our radar. We'll get on our radar. We'll do whatever it is. I'll send Chris and Leroy and Derek and Pastor Liz to your church. They'll do whatever we need to do to make your church one parish, one prisoner church. Number 2, fuel a one parish, one prisoner church. We have 25 churches on the board. We're exhausted and we need more help to keep this going. There are 30 applicants on our board. There's more than 13,000 incarcerated brothers and sisters in our state. So we have a lot of work to do. We still want to be doing this next year and the next year and the next year. And the next year.
Alvin, could you pull up someone said, okay, sweet. How do I do this? How do I become a church? And I want to help fuel it.
OneParishOnePrisoner.org. Danny is our handsome spokesperson on our key video. There's a lot of good detail here. There's a lot of good posturing. But if you're coming from the Zoom, scroll down, click this right away and get on our radar. We'll get in touch with you. We'll get the details. We'll walk you through the timeline. We'll get you in touch with these people that have done it before, our experts. We'll answer every question you have, and we'll make 25 churches in the county. We'll continue to make this better and better and better with your help.
Jamie, help us connect the dots here.
Yeah, I've been so blessed to hear about the mutual transformation occurring within our churches and our communities tonight through Underground Ministries. My name is Jamie Haynes, and I'm the treasurer on the board. I'm also the CFO of one of our underground employers, hiring people coming out of the system, T. Bailey, which is how I got involved in this exciting work. I'm a numbers person. I love a good Excel spreadsheet. And every single month, there's monthly expenses. I have groceries, I have Netflix, I have entertainment, I have fuel. It's an ongoing list. And if you're like me, you kind of want to know, well, what is it going to make to get this to happen? Well, for $42 a month, it'll launch an entire team into a 2-year journey with someone being released from prison. You want to do more? You can do more. For $84, you can launch 2 churches. And I encourage you to think about how many churches and how many people you'd like to help. If you want to do more than 2, we'd love to do more than 2. We have such exciting dreams for Underground Ministry in the next year. And I'm just in awe and wonder of just being a part of this process, of seeing this change in our community, that it's really exciting stuff that we're doing.
Thanks, Jamie. Yeah, Alvin has crunched the numbers and seen that if it costs about $500 for all of the work that goes into the applications from our partners that work with men and women inside different facilities, and going through those applications and finding a church and starting the conversations and helping these communities understand what we're doing here tonight. The personnel, the materials, it costs about $500, but that launches a team of thousands of hours of relationship and hopefully years without an expiration date. And so $500 a year, $42 a month, help us fuel some teams. So we're really hoping tonight that how you can interrupt mass incarceration, do one parish and prisoner, fuel one parish and prisoner. And Duncan had a story about why he joined.
Well, I've been involved for about 1.5 years. I've been on the board. Chris contacted me to be on the board, and I knew right away I was going to do it. And you see so much with this, and it's such an outreach to people. But I'll just confess, part of my interest in it was just how it might be rewarding to me personally. Just something to sort of break out of my comfort zone. I've sort of been distressed about these cycles of crime and incarceration and reincarceration. I just thought that, we had to do a better job than what we're doing. It's our failure that people have such a hard time getting back into it. And so, I saw how the Underground Ministries changes lives, not just the people who are coming out of prison, but the people who are receiving and helping them. And, I wanted to participate in that feeling. And also, I just thought that if we could lift these people up and help them be personally responsible for their lives and be productive, we would be better off. We would be safer in our own communities. We'd have new friends and new neighbors that we would, want to encounter. And so we would be enriched, we would be safer, and we would just have a better society. And so for me, there's all these little wonderful stories, but if you put them all together, it's a really big deal. It is a really big deal. And, I would just like to invite you to really think about helping in any way you can, because, the harvest is vast and right now the workers are few. So, step up, be there, help.
Thank you, Duncan. Hey, everyone, it's me again, your host, Alex. And I get to wrap this up. I'm here right now talking to you, not in a prison cell, not high in the streets, or running old gang politics, but in college getting my associates in human services, and now on staff at Underground Ministries. Because of these relationships that stuck with me, walked with me, believed in me, and always kept it real with me, this is how you can interrupt mass incarceration too. 1, do one parish, one prisoner yourself. 2, become a monthly supporter to fuel more teams, more people coming out of prison, or both. Alvin will send all of you the info now. And on behalf of everyone at Underground Ministries, thank you for joining us tonight. God bless you. If anyone wants to stay around for a few minutes and has any questions, please feel free to stay around. And thank you.
Thanks, everybody. At our peak, we had 104 people, which is fantastic. And plus all the 500, 600 people on Facebook. So that's even better.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you to all our storytellers and all our speakers. That concludes our evening tonight. If you need to take a restroom break or refresh any of your beverages, we'll be back at 8 o'clock for just a little bit of an after party and Q&A. If you got some more questions, we'd love to chat with you, but it is not required. Have a wonderful night.
Thanks for inviting us in, man.
Hey, Dan.
Let's have a good night. Good night, Chris.
Love you, Dad. Love you, Wally. Love you, Leroy.
Good night.
Y'all sticking around?
Hey, no.
Good night, good night.
Good night.